hasn't been a great few years for the video game industry in general, with a huge number of layoffs that have been occurring, closing down studios, especially ones that were gobbled up during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So now the recent news of Microsoft letting go at least 9,000 employees overall in their company, it's now affecting game studios.
Yeah, quite a bit. 9,000 layoffs across the entire company. This article, the GameSpot article, does not state states that they do not know exactly how many of those 9,000 were Xbox related layoffs, but I do believe we know it's at least quite a bit just by looking at what happened here. We'll get to that in a second. Before we go any further, I just want to point out that Microsoft made $70 billion in revenue last year, and I believe $28 billion in pure profit.
28 billion with a B.
$28 billion in profit. And their vague reasoning, their slimy reasoning about this was just basic corporate speak, and they said they wanted to make cuts that would allow them to be more agile.
More agile.
Yes.
Meaning spending money elsewhere without paying the people that we employed that we might have bought, their company a few years ago on top of that.
Because $28 billion is not enough. And if you look specifically at Microsoft's Xbox division, and we've been saying this for a while, not just us, I mean, everyone. We're by no means unique here, like we were in the Amico saga. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the backup.
Thanks for the backup, you shit heels. We've all been saying it forever, and the writing's on the wall, and it keeps getting clearer. This is an article from the Metro in UK. Xbox hardware is dead, says former Microsoft exec in scathing YouTube video. And I did not watch the video, but this was who was the last name Fryer. One of the things she says is that the announcement of the ROG Ally Xbox collaboration handheld is evidence of them, announcing an exit of the hardware business. And this is actually what I said, when we talked about it. This is not the internally developed Microsoft handheld that was supposedly being worked on. This is an external partnership where someone else is handling it.
It's a third party.
It's a third party. They're slapping an Xbox name on it. And
their OS.
And their OS,
yeah.
But they're not making it. And this is, and they've already said you can do other things on it.
Sure.
This is their slow pulling off of the Band-Aid, I think. This is a piece of hardware that they are kind of trying to position as their hardware, but it's not. It's just something that you can already get, but in a special Microsoft Xbox package. And this would have been something during the 360 era that clearly, if they were going to have made it, Microsoft would have made at the height of their popularity.
So this was Laura Fryer,
Fryer.
former Xbox executive. She said this in a podcast / YouTube video talking about the business, state of the business.
So, I mean, I have to agree with her on that. And like I said it, and I think many other people said it, but a Steam Deck competitor that they're not making is it's lazy. And it's what Microsoft has been doing with the Xbox stuff all the way back to, not all the way back, but recently, the Play Anywhere campaign and this is an Xbox, and this is an Xbox, and this is an Xbox. Like that campaign where they're showing you, fucking phones and tablets and, laptops. And they're trying so hard. They're failing miserably, and their idea is if we try to look like this goodwill company, maybe people will come back to us. But the fact is Microsoft has no goodwill, and they don't deserve any goodwill. And I think by taking your hardcore fan base and basically telling them that we're just going to put this on everything, kills a lot of enthusiasm that people might have had for the products. And if you have no enthusiasm, it doesn't matter where you put this stuff, people aren't going to play it. If you get rid of a console, why is anyone going to buy into an Xbox system, an Xbox ecosystem? And this also goes back to the ROG Ally discussion we had, when the Steam ecosystem has been there forever and is basically the de facto, the default.
Or if you just want to say PC gaming ecosystem,
yes,
you're sort of just surrendering to that. You're being displaced by these other ones that, I mean, like we said,
if you're an Xbox fan, you were an Xbox fan because you like consoles and you bought consoles, and now you're being told as an Xbox fan that your future in gaming is on the PC, a thing ostensibly you might have been avoiding forever, and that's why you were an Xbox fan.
Traditionally it was a package. When you bought a console, it was I like the Genesis console and this package of games that goes together with it. And obviously the past 10 years, it's all been, except for Nintendo, it's all been now converging into the consoles don't have separate packages anymore. But Microsoft has said this now in one way or the other the past several years. They've been saying this. Ever since, I think the first sort of turn of the key was when they said, well, you can play the Xbox games now on Windows now. You can get them at the Windows Store, you can play them on... So it's like, okay...
And then Xbox Game Pass came to PC, and it's just you're not going to what it has been them kindly warning people for years that the Xbox name is greatly changing and going away,
or just being a publisher,
right? And that's not going to bring people in. That's going to if you're going to make me go to PC, then I'm going to go to Steam. If you're not going to have any exclusives, I'm going to go to Nintendo.
Because now, if you're coming back to, if I was gaming on the Xbox, not force me. I bought into the ecosystem. I spent, we'll just say $400 buying a console, couple controllers, whatever accessories, the Kinect back then. Now I'm bought into the system and the games you're now offering me. I'm bought in. If I don't have to be bought into a product as a lead-in, then you have less control over me as a consumer about what I'm going to buy in the future. Because now I'm on a Steam Deck, now I'm on the Xbox handheld, and I can just buy a bunch of indie games. I can buy a bunch of, like I said, buy the Game Pass or the PlayStation Pass, whatever it's called, their version. And so now it's not special anymore.
Right.
It's like you're going from, it's almost like you have your own grocery store and you supply all the food, but now all that food's available in every other grocery store. That's basically what they're doing.
What they've done is they've stripped it of its identity.
Yes.
And I'm not saying the console war shit was good, but identity, having some sort of identity to your product is extremely important, and it's what made people such staunch Nintendo or Genesis or staunch Nintendo or Sega fans. Something like that, or staunch PlayStation fans. I'm not saying you got to have a rad attitude or be edgy, but there has to be some sort of identity to your product, and the only identity that Xbox has is the color green.
And an X letter. That's it.
I think it's, at the height, the 360 was very much... The Xbox 360 was a thing because it had an identity. It was the online gamers console. Before any of the other systems, they had Xbox Live, which allowed you to link up with people easily. So many of the games had stuff added in. They were one of the first consoles to have a store where you could buy the games in Xbox Arcade. They were incredibly unique in that industry, and even in the areas where they weren't as unique as they wanted you to think, they focused on it, and that's why they did so well during that era. And the Xbox One started off so bad with the announcement and the Kinect, and then
the DRM thing,
and by then other companies had come in, as they were always going to with the progression of games, and Sony got its online networking under control, and even Nintendo's got some online networking that's decent. Being able to play games online and talk to your buddy in a cheap headset is no longer novel.
Sure. By the way, Ian, you're a little bit off before. It wasn't 20 billion. It was only 26 billion. That was the problem.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
26 billion.
Sorry, that's, people are going to get on you for that, but so only 26 billion, and laying off 9,000 employees. So why are they doing this? The layoffs. Before I get into what's being affected by this, so according to the Seattle Times article, you're going to love this, Ian. Don't punch me. I'm just the messenger. A new attitude. This is from who wrote this article here? Alex Halverson for the Seattle Times, because obviously that's they're out in Washington, so he has the inside skinny. Maybe he has his notepad. Is it what?
It's 25.8 billion. Okay, can we at least get the number right?
We're just stupid drunken podcasters. I picture Alex being on the streets like some smoky underground garage talking to employees because he's there. Anyway, so
I've got I've got that. That's
more than 3,000 workers were laid off in Washington so far this year. Market's tough. So the thinking is that they want to throw a lot of money towards AI instead of people. That's the thinking.
I hope Microsoft loses everything. I cannot.
That's a TLDR.
I do not know how they can't take two steps back and see that everyone is fighting AI, firing your employees and hiring AI. What are you going to do when you finally realize that AI can't do what you think it can do, and then you have to hire people back? It's just a shell.
There's a couple of quotes here. For company veterans recently cut loose, Microsoft's apparent return to a culture of looming layoffs and poor communication has stopped what they saw as a positive evolution. I'm a Microsoft advocate, but it's really hard and sad to see Microsoft turn its back on what was a kinder and nicer work environment, said Kelly Bowen McCombs, a 25-year Microsoft veteran who was laid off in 2024. Microsoft didn't tie the layoffs to performance issues or target specific sorts of roles. The company said it needs to be nimble. It needs nimble, agile teams to run the artificial intelligence race, and is cutting costs to invest billions in AI. To your point, do you know what the goal is before you're getting there, or you're just running because everyone else is running? The same way they ran with NFTs a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Everyone's spending tons of money. GameStop investing tons of money into fucking NFTs, not knowing where it was headed, and it led to nowhere. You have no guarantee that this investments in AI is going to lead off into profitability, or it'll lead to an area where everyone else is doing the exact same thing and you're not going to stand out. It's extremely carriage before the horse stuff to me.
Yeah. I mean, nothing that we've seen AI do now leads me to believe that this is going to turn into anything for them. I mean, in the future, you can use AI to make games, graphics, like what the fuck? It's not just on the internet. I know that there are a lot of people out there in the real world who aren't paying attention to all this stuff that do use some casual AI. And usually when you explain it to them, they're like, I don't want to use generative AI. But this isn't what people want. The quality of, even if it's not immediate, the quality of this output is going to be so shitty. And that's something that I think CEOs and extremely money-hungry, money-minded people don't realize is we like art because it says something. You can't just put... it's not processed food.
Yeah, and here's the bad part about it. They're not desperate to get into this. Like their profits are great.
Yeah.
But so obviously they sunk, was it 75, 80 billion into acquiring Activision Blizzard. That finally went through somewhat semi-recently, right? That finally was finalized, or I think they got rid of the rest of the potential anti-monopoly things with the new administration. Either way. So they got to recoup that money, right? But so even if you made the argument, well, we're going to just get rid of these folks because we have to eventually pay that off. If they're reinvesting this money into fucking AI, that's not what the strategy is. Their strategy is literally, we think AI is going to be the future over people. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. You're gonna love this. Call me a sadist. The one time I ever agreed with Tucker Carlson, the one time, I know, just listen, hear me out. He was doing a discussion with Ben Shapiro. I know, even worse. Hear me out. I'm a sadist, but I like to hear the perspectives of these people where I'm like, I probably won't agree with anything they say. The one thing that I ever heard him say was Ben Shapiro was like, he was saying something to the fact of, well, we're going to have all these auto, technology is going to be great for these companies because they're going to have all these auto driving big rigs and trucks. And this is going to come very soon, and we have to adjust. And Tucker said, wait a second. You're going to come out with a new technology just because you can. you're gonna destroy maybe tens of thousands of working drivers just because you can. You're gonna do that just because you're allowed to do that. You're not gonna want protections for any of these drivers just because you're gonna have technology eliminate those jobs. And it was the one time I was like, just because you think you can get away with something doesn't mean you should, because it's having a destructive effect. That's the point of it.
Well, it's also, again, short-sighted. It's like, okay, if you lay off all these people,
and what happens if it doesn't work out?
Well, not only when it doesn't work out, but if you keep laying off people and replacing people with AI, which you can't really do because it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. Where the fuck is the money coming from to buy your products? And again, these companies don't seem particularly concerned about making products because they just keep firing all their teams.
Sure. At some point, it goes back to, well, you trust the people that have been with us for decades for doing good work. It's the one thing that why Nintendo has sort of been the same company for the last 45 years. They keep the same people and they're loyal to those people, which results overall, not 100% of the time, overall the level of quality will be near the top because you're entrusting and rewarding the same people and you're loyal to those people because they do good work. And I know that could be over the top moralistic, but good people that are rewarded, that feel empowered and feel respected, do better work. That's the employees that don't feel like their job's going to be on the line every quarter because of stockholders. They do not do the same job as someone that feels like they're a part of a family and a real team, like this 120 ex-employee for 25 years felt like she was at one point.
Yes.
Culture matters when it comes to businesses, sports teams, whatever. You have to lay a foundation for success culturally. And this is the exact opposite of doing that. This leads to overall bad morale, bad products, people that want to get out of the industry because they don't want to be next. Maybe they'll retire early. Maybe they won't recommend the company to someone else. Maybe an intern won't want to be with Microsoft because they see how they treat the employees. This is a cascade effect. None of this exists in a vacuum when it comes to business or things like this. And the fact that you have dumb podcasters pointing this out and that they don't see this is so alarming to me.
Well, and then other people say, honestly, I'm not sure they care. Maybe they do see it, but this is all about getting the bag and then leaving before they have to deal with repercussions.
You think so? They're going to have a big
golden
payoff
parachutes, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And that makes it worse because you want to believe that maybe they're just really stupid, but they're not. They're just evil. They're just evil and greedy. And, a lot of people cape for billionaires because they think they're going to magically turn into one of the chosen few, but you're not.
Or solve the world's problems.
Right. But you're not. And I don't know. 25.8 billion.
26 billion to round up.
Okay.
And profit.
And now that this is all laid bare and visible, and I think this is really exposing the disparity between what they say and what they're getting rid of and what's happening. I hope that people who have been hardened to this know they clearly deserve to make billions of dollars for being a CEO. I hope it really exposes just what kind of fuckery is going on and it wakes some people up to it.
So let's talk about now all the games that are going to be gone because of this that have been worked on for several years.
So it's not like this is just some small studios that fucked up and got, shit canned. This is John Romero's studio. Doom. I mean, I'm not saying Doom the game, but of Doom. His game. Shit canned.
They lost funding for their game. They're trying to see if they can get funding elsewhere.
Right. Okay. But so the title was claiming the whole studio had been laid off due to Microsoft cuts. But obviously, if they can get funding elsewhere, they'll be able to continue. Turn 10, Microsoft's internal second-party developer that handled the entire mainline Forza franchise, unceremoniously shuttered.
For 20 years.
20 years.
Doing these games for Microsoft.
Some of their biggest sellers. And again, this is what's so fucked up. It's not just and this would still suck. But it's not like a third-party developer that we're not. These are people who made the exclusives that made your system, and that's another reason that I think that's another reason why I think she's right. The end of hardware announcement has got to be around the corner because if you're shuttering the studios that made your first-party games, successful ones.
That basically with the foundation of your console.
That's showing that you have no interest in creating exclusives or an identity or a foundation for another system.
So another aspect of this is something that, again, we said it. We're not prognosticators, but this happened for all entertainment during the pandemic. Is the race to streaming and for services to get people to sign up was a race to the bottom in terms of, short-term profits over long-term sustainability. We saw it with all these streaming services. We saw it with Disney Plus. We saw it with a lot of these other streaming services that came and gone, Quibi, and other ones that let's just race to get subscribers now. Does it make sense? Is there actually a sustainable business model? We don't know, but let's just do it now. Disney Plus, we're gonna do 17 different Marvel series in the next 2 years. Is this sustainable? Is it profitable? We don't know. Let's just guess what? It ends up being not profitable, and your business model sucks because you try to outspend everyone else to get all these eyeballs on you for $10 a month, and then realizing, wow, we can't do this because what we're creating costs more than the subscriptions. Well, and that's what happens with something like Game Pass.
It's also the whole weird money making culture during pandemic was acting as if the pandemic was never going to end, and we were all going to be held captive by our entertainment subscriptions, and that's just not what happened.
Yeah, they thought everyone's going to have just 12 different subscription services a month for the rest of time. That's what they thought, and that. If you get me to sign up for $10 or $15 a month for Game Pass, I'm going to have it for the next 50 years, guaranteed.
Well, and I'll tell you what Game Pass did. I said on the podcast, Game Pass was a great value for the consumer, at least for a little while, because I had Game Pass for 3 months. And I think that was during a promotional sign up. I did not spend more than $45 on my 3 months with Game Pass. And you know what it did? It gave me 3 months to play all the Microsoft Xbox games that I had any interest in that were pulling me in any way, shape, or form to buying an Xbox, even a used one. And for $45, I experienced the Microsoft Xbox experience, was satiated in full, and I haven't spent a dime on Microsoft Xbox stuff since. $45 is what you made from me, when in reality, when in previous times, that would be a console sale. That would be at least some new game sales. Sure, some of them would be used. A controller, that's the other thing I wanted to say. I didn't have to buy a console. I didn't have to buy a controller. I could just use whatever controller I had. All of this extra money they got, what would have been in the past, if I bought an Xbox, played everything I wanted, and decided 6 months later I was done with it and sold it back, even considering the amount of money I got back, they're probably making, I'm just spitballing here, they're probably making $600, $700 off of me instead of $45, and that's their worst case scenario. That's I buy the system, a handful of games, an extra controller, and get bored with it and sell it off.
So you might say, well, Pat, screw Microsoft. We're getting a good deal as a consumer. Great, that's good now,
but it completely fucks over.
But once they devalue their entire product, when they devalue how much money they have to recoup, because these games cost tons of money to make. These games that you're getting for a $15 subscription could cost hundreds of millions of dollars in several years to make. Once you devalue that in the eyes of the consumer, you can't rewind the clock. It's tough to go back. So what happens then? After you make acquisitions of these studios, you find out in a few years, oh no, even if they come out with good games, we can't make our money back on them, and we have to shut these studios we just bought.
Except for they made $26 billion in profit.
Yeah, you have to square that still.
And you can't. And and that's the thing. I didn't want to interrupt, but everything you're saying is right. Sure. And they did devalue their games. They absolutely did. And in doing that, I think they did destroy their console business as something that really had any potential. But they still were making plenty of money. They just weren't making they weren't making enough to make them happy.
Well, Microsoft overall is doing other things than games.
Well, I know.
We know the profit for Microsoft. We don't have it broken down to every single game dissection, but it's still a ton of money. You know, the bean counters want everything to make
Yeah.
a certain. It's called margin. How not profit's not good enough. We want a certain margin of profit for all our different sectors.
And that's shareholders who are the
Yes.
real customers.
Yes. So yeah, overall, like again, this whole Activision Blizzard sale. I was going over it with Daniel, who he's brilliant. The guy's a genius. He works on the books with me. Ian knows him. We're talking about that
Lovely
sale.
fella.
We're talking about that sale, and obviously includes like the mobile stuff they got as well with Blizzard. But when you spend $70-something billion, that's not all the money in the acquisition. That's the beginning of the acquisition. Then you have to do the cost to integrate all these employees, figure out what systems are duplicated, building out systems for all this.
Physical buildings for staffing.
And the staff, that becomes a new cost. And of course, you're gonna
You don't buy. It's not like buying a candy
It's
bar.
not a video game. I spent $75 buying this item, and that's it. So when you think about that, they didn't have to make money back on this eventually. The shareholders want to make their money back on this. This all goes into that sort of equation about what they're doing.
And it's still then the blame is still on them because
Yes.
you didn't need to buy Activision Blizzard for $70 billion.
Yeah, maybe you could have got a much better deal, but you're afraid someone else is going to buy it, even though the Sony can't afford that high of a sale. Yeah, no, it's infuriating. It's infuriating. I want you to remember this. This is capitalistic Pat talking right here. Just because they're in power, the presidents, the CEOs, and shareholders, that doesn't mean they're smarter than you. They just have power. And it doesn't mean they were smarter than you to get there. They're just there.
In general, the older you get and the more people you meet, you realize these people do not magically have any more smarts or ability than you. It's a matter of right place, right time.
Who you know,
no one knows what they're doing.
Whose asses you kiss, who you know, you play it safe so you don't get fired and you fail upwards. A lot of it's that.
Yep.
And I know that's very cynical. That's been my experience. I mean, I've talked directly to CEOs of the market research companies I've worked for, or the presidents. They're a bunch of fucking assholes half the time. Not all the higher ups, but certain ones definitely are. They just are. And then you realize, well, that's probably the proportion maybe of the people at large, or maybe some of it. Then you realize maybe the power hungry people just get in the place of power, so they're more assholes, or some of that involved. Anyway, it's super. I know it's super depressing for a subject. But, it's something that you just have to reiterate. And then, where do we go from here? I don't know. All I know is that Nintendo is siloed out. They're safe on their own. They've done it the smart way. They haven't overbought. They've taken care of their employees. They haven't done these massive layoffs that they realize are just for short-term, profit gain, but long-term screw your company over because your best employees making the best products are now gone. They haven't done that, fortunately. And so they're sort of safe from this. So there's that at least.